Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies for Some Places, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network, and I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
Okay, as you may have guessed, we have movies. But first, let me just tell everybody over on our Patreon, for you patrons out there and for anybody considering becoming a patron, exclusive audio this week is us talking about Coming to America in anticipation for the sequel, also entitled Coming to America. Spelled with a different two, of course, but you know, how clever. So anyway, if you're interested in that, please go check out the Patreon, patreon.com/spoilerpiece, and consider becoming a member because there's all kinds of cool stuff. But regular show, we have 4 movies on the docket tonight. We have the documentary Billie Eilish or Eilish?
I thought it was Eilish, but maybe.
Yeah, okay. Billie Eilish.
I've heard
Billie
Eilish.
Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry. I Care a Lot, which is a Netflix movie starring Rosamund Pike, The Vigil, and Cherry. I just feel like you should say The Vigil every time you say it. Because
it should be a little ominous.
So we're going to kick it off this week avec Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry, which I am the only one who saw that because I like music documentaries. But I think that the 2-hour and 30-minute runtime of this was intimidating considering there's another 2-hour and 30-minute movie on the show this week. So
yes,
you got to pick your battles, you know? And if you're not given to documentaries about 17-year-old pop stars, then maybe this isn't for you. But I watched it and I enjoyed it, and I don't really know her music too well. Of course, I know that fucking huge hit she had, the one Bad Guy. But what I was most interested about was seeing how her album was recorded and all of that stuff. So they get into all of that in the movie. It actually opens up with them recording her album in her brother's bedroom, which is more or less where they recorded it. Recorded it in her bedroom, her brother's bedroom. It was mastered in their living room. And then it won a shitload of Grammys. But the bulk of the documentary deals with her physical problems as a result of doing the live shows where, you know, I don't know if you guys have seen any footage, but she basically jumps for 2 hours when she's performing.
Whoa.
Yeah, well, all the fast songs anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so she, you know, has shin splints, and, you know, she was a dancer when she was a kid, and she had to quit because she had this, sounds like a really horrible hip injury. Blah, 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 blah. And also, I was interested in it just because if you've ever read an interview with her or seen her or listened to any of the lyrics of her songs, she's really, really open about
she is.
everything. And part of me thinks, wow, that's great. And the more, you know, introverted part thinks, maybe keep some of that stuff to yourself. But you know what, man? Fucking go do you, you know, like, why not? Because like some of the stuff that she says, even though she's 17 or 18 or whatever, you hear it and you're like, yeah, I definitely can relate to that. Like last week, not even like when I was 18, like when I was in my 40s. So fucking go for it is what I have to say. And also, some of her lyrics are actually like, they're good. I mean, it's not like she's some chump just writing, you know, shit.
No,
how
she's
articulate
great.
of me.
She's really talented and she's very wise. Yeah.
Yeah, and she plays instruments and she writes her songs, and she and her brother record them, and they still, even though they're super famous and have a ton of money, they still live in the same house they grew up in the Highland Park neighborhood in Los Angeles, which is where Mark Maron lived for the longest time.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for seeing the production stuff and also for just seeing her be, I don't want to say a raw nerve because that just doesn't seem like fair, but considering she leaves nothing unsaid, you know, it's mildly appropriate. Oh, I also wanted to say that she talks a lot about, I didn't know this, that she has Tourette's syndrome. Yeah, which it became a thing. Like she was doing an interview and she, like a lot of people with, I've known a few people with Tourette's, and then you read about this stuff too, and you see depictions of it and you're like, all right, that one's accurate, that one's not. But she has some control over the tics that she has, and they're mostly physical. She doesn't have verbal tics really. So when you see her in interviews and she like opens up her eyes really wide and darts them back and forth, she's having a tic. And people realized that there was an interview that she did, and she said, I used to let them out when the interviewer was asking me a question, because in TV interviews, they almost always cut away from you. She said, and then I had this interview where they didn't cut away from me at all while they were asking questions. And it was a long interview. And so people saw it. And so then it became a thing. So I decided to address it. And I just thought that was really fascinating.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And actually, it just kind of looks like she's looking off into the distance. It's not even like really, I don't even know how people noticed it, frankly. So, anyway, that's the movie. I think if you have 2.5 hours and you're interested in that sort of thing, I mean, it's definitely not a movie for everybody. It's not like a documentary that everyone needs to see. But if you like her and you like openness in your celebrities and things like that, I'd say definitely go for it. It's not like a hard hitting documentary. It's completely and totally, approved by them. So you're not going to get any like big fucking deep revelations. But like I said, she's open about everything anyway. So you kind of are getting deep revelations. I
have a question.
Do you?
I do. So one of the things I do, I'm actually not like super into her music. I mean, it's totally fine. It's just, I'm just not super well versed in her music. But one of the things I really like about her is how, speaking of her openness, how open she is talking about body image and body issues and how she's been body shamed and shamed for what she wears and her gender. And I'm curious if she talks about that at all in the documentary.
Boy, I don't really remember that being a big subject.
No worries. I was just curious.
There is a lot of like, she spends a lot of time in hair and makeup and stuff like that, but they don't really talk about her. She doesn't really talk about her body image or anything like that. So
yeah, she has said interesting things about like the clothes that she wears, like on stage and in performances, and yeah, and she's been criticized that, she doesn't look super feminine. And anyway, she has had some really insightful things to say about that. And so yeah.
Who gives a shit if she's super feminine? I mean, just fucking, I swear to God.
Because people comment on women's bodies all the time.
I know. It's just one of those things.
And she's not even a woman. She's a girl. Like, she's a girl. But anyway, yeah. You have actually spoiler pieced me into wanting to see. I kind of wanted to see it anyway because I'm also really fascinated about women artists and behind the scenes. But yeah, now you definitely spoiler pieced me into it.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, the scene in one of her videos, I don't know which one it is, where the tarantula crawls out of her mouth. Yeah, she did that. Just so everyone knows. Yeah, she has a tarantula.
Well,
you might have spoiler pieced Evan out of it.
Yeah, I mean, you're already.
Sorry.
I hate spiders so much.
It's only in like 2 shots, so. But let's move on to I Care a Lot, which is not by Faith No More, but it is a movie on Netflix starring Rosamund Pike, which, mea culpa, I only saw about an hour and 15 minutes of, which is too bad because I was really digging it, but I just ran out of time. And you all saw all of it. So what did you think?
Well, should we start first with should we start first with a quick plot summary?
Please do.
Movie? All right, here's the one sentence on IMDb, and it's written by Netflix. A crooked legal guardian who drains the savings of her elderly wards meets her match when a woman she tries to swindle turns out to be more than she appears. That is a very oversimplified version.
Yeah, but that's
basically, Rosamund Pike plays custodian. I forget what the exact legal term is.
Legal guardian.
Legal guardian.
Legal guardian. And she has this racket with the doctor where the doctor will, put in a document with the court to say that someone is, mentally unfit to care for themselves. And then she swoops in and takes over as their legal guardian and then, drops them off in a home and then just starts liquidating all of their assets and paying herself money out from the estate. Diane Wiest is her latest mark. And it turns out Diane Wiest is no slouch.
Yeah. I got that far. This is spoiler piece and you guys can fill in the gaps, but I got to the part where Rosamund Pike is kidnapped and someone puts a plastic bag over her head and then Peter Dinklage walks up and pokes a hole in it so she can breathe. That's where I got. So
and you stopped there?
Yeah. Well, it was like
I know, right?
I originally, we always do the show at 8:30, and then one of you was like, "Oh, I need an extra 15 minutes." I was like, "Great." And then I had some technical difficulties and blah, blah, blah. So I just, it just didn't
It
happen.
happens.
It's a shame, Dave, because I feel like the movie takes some really interesting turns after that.
Oh,
It
okay.
goes to some places.
And yes, it goes to some places, and I'm kind of bummed that you didn't also see them. I think to your question of how do we feel, how do I feel overall about it, I really liked it. I very much enjoyed this movie. It's a ride, and I was there for it, for all of it. Even down to some of the last couple turns where I was wondering, what is this movie doing? Where is it going? And I don't know. I was satisfied by the end of it. I'm only speaking for me because I'm curious to hear what Megan has to say, but it all came together for me.
Yeah. So, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. And so this is super slick with, it's montages and slow-mo and the electronic score, which I found, as a sidebar, wildly distracting rather than enhancing the narrative or the emotions
See, I dug it.
on screen. What did you say? You loved it?
I said I dug it.
Yeah, no, I did not. Like I said, found it very distracting. But this film would not work in any way, shape, or form without the outstanding performance of Rosamund Pike, who, oh my God, I love her as villainous women. I want to see her. I mean, I love her all the time. I think she always gives a great performance in everything, even if I'm not a fan of the film. She is a commanding force on screen when she portrays villainous women, and I love it, and I want to see more of this, and I want to see her do this kind of role in different variations more. I love that she's a queer character. I love that she's in a romantic and professional relationship with her partner, Fran, who is her work partner, but also her life partner too, and that's great. This reminded me a lot in sort of its tone and its dark humor and certain things. It reminded me very much of Wolf of Wall Street. I do wish that it explored the exploitation and abuse of older people more, because when the film starts out, that's what I thought it was going to be about. And I really thought, and I really thought that we were going to see Diane Wiest because it's very clear that Diane Wiest is, like Marla, Rosamund Pike, has met her match with her. And I was hoping that she would be so conniving or such a force herself that they were going to go, head to head. And that's not what happens. Instead, she essentially has a secret son that nobody knows about. That's Peter Dinklage, and he's in the Russian mob. And he's the one who really thwarts Marla's efforts in, stealing all of Diane Wiest's money. But what I do find really fascinating about this film, even though it's not about elder abuse, really, like it's touching on it, it's kind of the thrust of the narrative. But I find that this is a really intriguing look at sexism and misogyny and the way that men threaten women. And because right away, right from the start, Marla is threatened by Macon Blair, and she's threatened throughout the film by men. And there's a really great conversation between her and Fran where Fran is like, we should stop this. We should get the fuck out of town. And she's like, I've been threatened by men before, countless times. And the only amount of times it's come to anything. And I thought she was going to say 0, and she doesn't. She says 2. And I was like, ooh, I was like, I want to know more about her and more about this. And so her performance and her character really sucked me in, and I found her riveting. But I have to say, I do think it doesn't quite all come together by the end. And I think the fact that her and Peter Dinklage team up after he's tried to kill her multiple times, after he's tried to kill Fran. Yeah, I didn't really buy the fact that they would be partners. But even though they're both greedy and ruthless. And then the fact that she's on top of the world and, she's gotten even more money and she's so successful. And then she's murdered at the end of the film. I'm like, another dead queer woman. Great.
She's murdered?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Macon Blair comes back around and shoots her.
Yes.
Oh, Macon Blair?
Yes.
Of all the people.
Yes.
I mean, I like Macon Blair, but I only want to see him killing people in
Blue Ruin.
Yeah.
Such a great film. And he's always great. But yeah, I think, and I felt very torn by it because I'm like, okay, she's such a, an asshole, and she's horrible, and she's a parasite off of vulnerable people, and she's so manipulative. And yet I'm also like riveted because she's so brilliant at what she does, and she's, fearless. And fearless characters are so compelling to watch. Like, because in real life, most of us are not fearless. Most of us are scared of something, many things. And the fact that she does not fear death, she does not fear pain, she doesn't fear anything. It's so fascinating and magnetic and seductive to watch. But yet at the same time, so I'm like wrestling with this. Like, I'm like, I know she's terrible. I know she should get her comeuppance. But at the same time, it's like this whole film, she's been threatened by men. And here we go. Here she is being, killed by a man. And yet again, another queer woman dead on screen. It just pissed me off.
Fair enough. I think for me, it was more just like, okay, this person is evil and is deserved this comeuppance. I don't think I was dwelling too much on who was doing the shooting, but I understand how that reads. I can understand the frustration.
Well, even if it was a woman who killed her, I would still be pissed because queer women are killed exorbitantly on screen in film and television. So yeah, it's bothersome and it's upsetting. Even if it's an evil queer woman, I don't care. It's still bothersome and problematic nonetheless.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the challenging, first of all, I want to say I agree with a lot of things you said. I think Rosamund Pike is amazing in this. So she is magnetic. I think this movie at points for me looked really slick. I really dug some of the shots and the editing. There's one particular shot I'm thinking of where she's talking with Chris Messina, who's the lawyer who works for Peter Dinklage and swoops in and tries to make like a cash deal to buy Marla out. And there's when the conversation between them is amazing, but when he's walking out of the room, she's sitting there facing the camera in her chair with her back to him, and it's such a good shot of him like walking out, and like the focus shifts. There's a few shots like that are really cool. I dug the music. To me, it very much reminded me of Uncut Gems. I think that's part of why I was digging it.
Not the music. I don't.
It had a similar kind of score. And I don't know. I was really into this movie, and I was not expecting it to take the turn toward the end where Peter Dinklage offers to like team up with her and to make this corporation where they train other people to do this. I was kind of shocked it went that direction. Honestly, I was kind of shocked, but not really, given like the point in the movie we were in that like she and Fran survived. I thought that they like put them in situations where it's like, okay, yeah, that person is still in an escapable situation. So the fact that she, her car, they throw her car, she's like speeding down a road in a car, passed out, and then she like wakes up as it plunges into the water. And the fact that she climbs out, spits out that tooth, brings it to the convenience store, and then puts it in milk. I love the fact that that's like a detail we know about Marla as a character, is that she's carrying around her tooth all night, and then she eventually, gets to safety and then goes to her like midnight dentist appointment to get her tooth put back.
Yeah, by the way, I love that she has a midnight dentist. It kind of reminds me of the doctor on like The Blacklist, but anyway, who's like doing kind of surreptitious surgeries. But I also love, in addition to that milk jug tooth scene, I also love that she's at the gas station and because she's soaking wet, she's like taking off her clothes and like putting on new clothes and drying off, and she puts her face against the hot dog heater. Like, yeah, it's really great. I love that. I also want to say, and I agree with you about the cinematography, and this is cinematography, but also her performance. Very early on when she's in the courtroom and she wins her case, there's a great shot. It's such a close up of her face, and she has like this imperceptible shift where it's just the slightest coy smile, and I love that. It's it's great. And that one shot, it's like tells you kind of everything you need to know about this character.
Yeah, she kind of like has this like cocky kind of glint in her eye for so much of the movie, and it's just like, it's such a small detail, but it adds so much to every scene that she's in.
Yeah.
Well, you spoiler pieced me into wanting to finish it.
You should, because I think it goes some some interesting places, and I don't know, it continued to engage me throughout. Like I never lost interest in the movie.
Okay. Noted. So go ahead,
yes.
Megan.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask you a question. So, but if you're going to talk, then maybe you'll answer it without me having to ask it. Go ahead.
Well, what's your question? Now I want to know.
My question was, would you recommend this despite the death of a queer woman at the end?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, it's upsetting seeing that because it happens disproportionately on screen. So it is really frustrating and disheartening. And I'm sure I will get pushback, and I'm fine with that, because the fact that she is such a, villainous, evil character. And like I said, I care that she's a villainous character, but I kind of don't care, because it just happens so often. Which the thing of it is that if we just had more queer women and a greater diversity of queer women characters, then this wouldn't be such an issue. Then I wouldn't be so upset when a queer woman dies at the end of a film, but because there's still just not enough, especially queer women who are not, white and thin and cis. Yeah, it would be a different story. But yes, I think this film, I think it's a good film. It's a solid film, but I think Rosamund Pike's performance is so fucking amazing that it's worth seeing for her performance, if nothing else. Even if you hate the rest of the film, it's worth watching for her and I don't think it's a terrible film, but yeah, she is so amazing in it. It's definitely worth watching.
Mm-hmm.
See, I thought she was a little Gone Girl-esque. Amy-esque. Amy, was that her character's name?
Mm-hmm. It's Amy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I love. I mean, I loved her in Gone Girl. I love her in this too.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Oh, one final thing I wanted to ask. Did either of you realize before watching this, because I didn't, that a good chunk of this was shot in and around Boston?
Yes.
I didn't know
that. I recognized the brownstones right away. I was like, that's Boston. And then
Boylston and Tremont. I knew when Peter Dinklage was getting his pastries.
Yep. And I was like, I saw the wide shot and I was like, is that Boston? And I was like, yep. And then I saw, it was filmed in Dedham.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, so I did. I think this is, the one thing I was going to say, Dave, before you asked your question is that I think this is an interesting look at the kind of bastardization of the American dream in the pursuit of wealth and power. And while it might not explore those issues fully, and that's totally fine, it doesn't have to, I think it's raising kind of interesting issues while being kind of a, you called it a fun ride, Evan. And yeah, I think it is raising some interesting questions, even if it isn't really delving deeply into those issues.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. But Rosamund Pike, God damn, I love that woman. She's so good in this.
Yeah, she's okay.
Oh, one more thing I want to say. Aiza Gonzalez, the woman who plays Fran, she's also amazing. I think she had good camaraderie with Rosamund Pike.
I liked her a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so then moving on to
the Vigil. Now ready.
I'm saying it wrong. I shouldn't say the Vigil. I should say like the Vigil, or I don't know, like the Vigil it's giving it too much evil. It's not. I don't know.
I mean, there's some evil.
I mean, it is about a demon.
I was like, there's some evil in it.
I mean, yes, but spoiler alert: the demon kind of gets his sort of, unless that's him walking down the stairs at the end of like the.
Oh, it definitely was.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
I think so.
Oh yeah, it's blurry, but it's unmistakable. Yeah.
In which case, it reminded me of
think
It Follows in that regard.
Yes, which is so
for
good.
Sure.
I love It Follows.
Well, somebody who's not me do the sum up of this, because I will just get into the like, and then there was a thing on the table that it set up. So somebody else.
I can take a crack at this. So this film is about, his name is Yakov, and he has pretty recently left Orthodox Judaism, and he is trying to kind of figure out what his life looks like now that he's left the Orthodox community in New York City. And he is asked, he's kind of down on his luck. Like he's not been able to find a job, and he's in kind of some desperate need of some money. And, his rabbi from his neighborhood, who's played by Menashe Lustig, who was in the movie Menashe several years ago.
Good movie.
And I was expecting maybe a little more Menashe in this, but he's good in it, in his parts that he's in. Anyway, so his rabbi asks if he will be a shomer, if he will. It's a Jewish custom where the body of someone who's deceased is placed under a sheet, and someone needs to be watching over the body at all times until they actually move into like the funeral proceedings. And so he's asked by his rabbi to just do a quick 5-hour stint. NBD, the last person who was supposed to do it, they ducked out quickly, and so can he fill in? And he's going to make, I think, $400 or $500 on it. There's a little bit of haggling. I think they land on $400. So will he do it? And he says yes, and he soon finds out why the other person ran away from this assignment, because he goes to this home. It's a husband who died, and he was a Holocaust survivor, and his wife, who's played by the always brilliant Lynn Cohen. I love seeing her in things, and unfortunately she passed away, but it seemed like she was in like a million things before she passed away. So I feel like we just keep getting more Lynn Cohen performances I wasn't expecting.
Oh yeah.
In like the best way. And so, yeah, so he settles in for what should be a kind of easy couple of hours, but it's a movie that's like a horror movie on the level of like he's trapped in this house that's haunted and there's a demon there, but it's also about him grappling with his faith and leaving the Orthodox community and dealing with that, but also dealing with trauma. You find out through a series of flashbacks that his younger brother, was accidentally killed by some guys who were picking on them, and he fell out into the street, was hit by a car. And so it's like a combination of things, of personal demons, if you will, that Yaakov is dealing with. And then he's specifically dealing with this demon called the Mazik, which we find out feeds on like fear and pain. We find out that it latched on to the deceased man. I'm totally blanking on his name, Mr. Litvak, Ruben Litvak. And yeah, I think that's all the important stuff. Am I forgetting anything?
No, I think that's the whole movie. It's a good overview.
Thanks.
So it was all right.
Oh.
I mean, I appreciated, though, that when he first really comes into contact with the demon, he's downstairs in the basement watching like some Super 8 film or something. I don't know. Of like the deceased being like, and then there was a demon and the demons and the demons. And then his wife, who is sitting in the background in the film that's showing, she says, "Look behind you," or something like that. And it was just like, oh, so they're going to tell us that it's behind him. Oh, and then it is. I don't know. I kind of liked that. I was like, oh, and it is there and gross.
Yeah. I would argue that he did run into the demon before that. There was like several other scenes upstairs where he was seeing creepy shit like behind him. Like when he puts his headphones in and sits down and you're like, okay, something's going to pop up behind him. Or there was that figure on the kitchen floor that had like the toenail that was scratching. Ugh.
There's been a lot of there's been a lot of toenails in movies lately. I don't know what that's about, man, but let's just put an end to that shit.
Yeah.
What other films have toenails? Am I forgetting?
I just feel like I've seen. I don't know. For me to like think that I have seen it,
that's fair.
That I probably have. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like it is fine. I appreciated that it was pretty short, because horror movies, generally speaking, should be short-ish. All movies should be short. No movie should be longer than 97 minutes. Somebody had that opinion. Who is that? Who had that opinion? That's like a thing somewhere.
That is a thing, but I don't agree with that opinion.
I don't agree with that either. I think lots of movies can be shorter though. But yeah, I dug the lead performance. I really liked him a lot.
Yeah, he's great.
And
yeah, Dave Davis.
Yeah, and a lot of the scares, even though of the jump variety, kind of worked for me. But I don't know if I buy the whole. It's like the demon's gonna feed on your fear and sorrow or whatever it feeds on, and then we have
and then it latches onto you for life.
Wait,
how fucked up is that?
That is. Wait. I have a question. Why wouldn't you believe that?
Because I mean. I think I've had enough of demons in horror movies latching onto people for whatever reason,
Well,
so you've reached demon saturation.
I think that may be it. It's demon saturation.
Well, yeah. Okay. But I think what makes this movie really fascinating is that it is a uniquely Jewish horror film. Like, it centers in the Orthodox community. It centers on Jewish characters and I don't know the Mazik's origins in like Jewish folklore. If that, like, I know like I know the Gollum story. I know, the Dybbuk. Those are the like kind of well known ones of like the Jewish like monsters and demons. But I don't know. I thought the Mazik was pretty effective. I think, especially knowing that it latched on to this Holocaust survivor and this like traumatic event and how that kind of just affected the trajectory of his life. And now, Yaakov is trying to, go out on his own but he's like at risk already of something else like latching on and controlling his life. I found that particularly effective. And I thought the space was used effectively. I thought the lighting was really cool, like the different zones of lighting. Like the living room was like this pinkish light, and the kitchen was like this bluish greenish, and then there's like this yellowish light on the stairs, and just some like creepy imagery, like when Lynn Cohen was like walking backwards up the stairs. Even just like simple things like that just creep me out.
Yeah, okay, I buy it. Yeah. I was moved to tears almost when his brother sat up under the whatever it is that's covering up the deceased and is like, "You left me," and he's like, "I'm so sorry," and then
I was crying on that.
and then he just wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, I have to say, so yeah, I agree with you, Evan. That I thought this was good. And I agree. I liked it a lot because of its uniquely Jewish roots and its Jewish traditions and, Jewish story. And I also agree with you, Dave. I think you said that, or you both, I think, said this, that Dave Davis gives such a great performance. And I think it's a really, really moving performance. And that scene, Dave, that you were talking about, I love that scene. I also love that this is really, it's a fascinating story that we're seeing a character who has left the orthodoxy. It's not, I know there was that TV show on Netflix, but it's not, or I think it's Netflix, maybe it's Prime. I know you watch it, Evan, or you have.
Unorthodox.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah.
But it's not a story that we really see in film too often. So I thought that was really interesting. But one of the most gutting scenes for me is when Yaakov is on the phone with his therapist and he's like,
"Oh my God."
He's like, "Doc, I'm seeing things and I'm not okay." And it's like very clear he's having like panic attacks and he's so scared and he's, worried that his mental health is deteriorating. And then when his doctor calls back and his doctor starts saying kind of weird things about like the head being backwards and he's like, "Wait, what?" And then the call waiting and then it's his doctor. So it's really not his doctor in the original call. Like, it's such a simple thing, but it's so effective in how unnerving it is, because it's such a vulnerable moment to be calling your psychiatrist or your therapist about, how you're having these fears and the, PTSD flashbacks and a demon is taking advantage of that. Yeah, I thought it worked really, really well and it was incredibly gutting.
Yeah, actually, Megan, you brought up something that I was meaning to bring up. So I appreciate you saying that about the stuff with the technology. Like,
yes.
The phone, like the conversation with the therapist. It turns out he's talking to the demon, not the therapist. When he gets the video of himself asleep, that was fucking creepy.
Oh my God,
as shit.
That's so creepy.
Yeah.
Then when he's talking to that woman who he asked out for coffee, or she wanted him to ask her out. Yeah. And
the face that she makes is so freaky. And then the demon comes out in the FaceTime and like snatches her away. Oh my God.
That was creepy.
Yeah. All that stuff I think was really effective. I think some of the effects come off a little chintzy, like the scene later where he kind of like gears up to fight the demon. He raps to Philin and he's like got his candle and he's like ready to go and basically like torch the demon and like pray in its face. There's like the walls are like that effect that we've seen like a million times where it looks like, like a sheet where someone's like clawing from the wall. I feel like that kind of was a little cheesy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Forgot about that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was low budge. What are you going to do?
I mean, it was low budget, but we've also seen low budget films that have done a lot with very tiny budgets. So,
let's nitpick, shall we? Yeah, you're right.
I was like, I'm right.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the worst thing about it, yeah, it's a minor critique, but yeah.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Like otherwise, I think it's like extremely compelling, and like all the stuff with like the bones crunching that really freaked me out. Like when he tries to leave the apartment and like his body starts locking up on him.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
There's been a lot of that too.
There has. Yeah, she did tell him, Lynn Cohen did say, it won't let you leave and you'll be crawling back here.
And he did.
Yeah.
He did crawl back.
Yeah. And Lynn Cohen is, I know you said this, Evan, but it bears repeating. Lynn Cohen is always wonderful. She's great.
Indeed.
And yeah, I'm happy that I feel like I've gotten all these like bonus times here that I was not expecting.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, but I think we're seeing, I mean, horror is always very political as a genre, all films are political, but that's a whole other conversation. But horror especially, and especially of late, I love that it's been, filmmakers have been telling these very personal stories and really infusing their culture and their traditions within the stories. I'm thinking of His House and, Under the Shadow, films like that. And this is along those lines too. And I love that we're seeing a horror film, from a Jewish tradition angle. And I think that that's really, really great.
I really dug it. And I was happy I got to see this through the Boston Jewish Film Festival, but it's opening wide plenty of places this week to see, which is also awesome.
You watched it a second time. Did you watch it a second time then?
No, I saw it originally through the Jewish Film Festival. They did like an early kind of release, which was kind of cool. They had like about a week of showtimes before it's, I think, like wider VOD release.
Well, cool. Are we all set then on the Vigil, gang? Because I know everybody wants to talk about our last movie.
Do we?
Cherry. Well, if only to spout venom at what a group of talented people making such a piece of shit. Oh, wow. My God.
You're coming in hot, guns blazing.
There is not one redeeming quality about this movie except maybe Tom Holland's performance. And
I'm going to say Tom Holland's performance and the score. I really liked the score tremendously.
Oh, you know what? I actually wrote down that the score was really good. So,
the score was great.
I don't think I like the score. I think to echo a comment from you, Megan, I think I found it intrusive. Yeah.
I did not use the word intrusive, but that is a good one.
Sorry.
No, that's a good one. I wish I had said intrusive because that was really good. Maybe I did say intrusive. Now I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
Either way, good point.
I just feel like, well, okay, sum up. I'll try this one. So there's a kid. He's kind of a doofus. He falls in love.
Sorry.
He is.
Off to a great start.
Tom Holland's a kid. He's kind of a doofus. He falls in love with this woman. I have no idea why. She's kind of a doofus. And he falls in love with her and he tells her, I love you. And she's like, thanks. And then the next day she's like, I'm going to transfer to McGill in Montreal. And he's like, what? So he joins the army. And then she comes back and she's like, I'm not really going to go to Canada. That was dumb. And he's like, I joined the army. And she's like, what? You joined the army? And he's like, oh, let's get married. And she says, okay. So then he goes to Iraq and, sees a bunch of weird shit and comes back and has PTSD. And this is the one time in the movie that I thought there was really any effective anything. The scenes where he's lying in bed, like having these horrible panic attacks. I thought those couple of moments were really good. But then otherwise, then they become heroin addicts and then they get in trouble with their dealer. And then he starts robbing banks, which from the beginning, the movie opens with a bank robbery.
Right.
It's like one of these jump back and forth in time movies.
With title cars and obnoxious red filters.
Yeah, and
them.
lots of like stupid color tricks, just like dumb shit. And it ends.
Yeah, it's hyper stylized.
It ends with him turning himself in and spending 15 years in prison, and then he gets out. And then he does good. He gets sober, and then he gets out, and
Wow.
and then she's waiting to pick him up, and it's clear that she's sober too. And it's like, who fucking? First of all, how many times do I have to see this fucking story? Okay, I already saw Requiem for a Dream. I already saw, except everybody in that one dies basically. I already
Mhm.
saw, you know,
Yeah, this movie is slightly less grim, although it feels pretty grim in a lot of
It does feel
places.
grim.
yeah. And it's just like, you know, stories of addiction, please tell me a different story, okay? Because addiction in movies anyway, it kind of takes you to the same place pretty much every time, you know? And then you either get sober or you don't. And then the movie's over. And this movie is 2 hours and how long? 21 minutes?
21
20.
minutes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's worth noting that all of us had to watch this movie in pieces because it was just too difficult to make it through in one sit down. And that should tell you something.
Yeah, well, it's and I don't like to use this criticism because it sometimes feels not right, but this movie is slow, man. And you can see everything coming a
Mhm.
mile away. And then it finally happens. And you're like, great. Can we move on to the next thing that I can see happening? Oh, okay, great. And there are a lot of things in this movie that are just unexplained. And then they tell you that they're unexplained, which is even stranger. Like when Jack Rayner, is that the actor's name? Like the one
Yeah.
I thought good performance in this movie, like start to finish, was Jack Rayner. The only character I thought was even remotely compelling.
Which character is
He's
that?
so that guy.
I don't even know who that is.
Pills and Coke.
I don't know who that is.
Pills and Coke.
Don't know who that is.
He's the drug dealer, the two polo shirt wearing guy.
Yeah.
Oh, the guy he calls Biff.
Yeah. From Back to the exactly. And so
Yes.
so they rob a bank and they finally get, you know, Pills and Coke to do the bank robbery with them after many times of him not doing the bank robbery. Okay. So then he gets shot, but they have no idea. Nobody else in the bank has a gun, you know, or fires a gun or that you can see. And it's like, how did he get shot? And then Tom Holland's like, I never found out how he got shot. It's, oh my God. What?
No, because they just dump his body.
'Cause it doesn't
stupidly.
matter.
I mean, honestly, you know, and the
Mhm.
moral vacuum that everything, yes, exactly, Evan. They dump his body and it never comes up again.
Right. You never know if that had any factor into his sentencing, or if they just never even found out because they probably just like, I don't know, looks like robbery. He's dead. Case
Yeah.
closed.
Like,
So I just want to interject, though, that this is actually based on a true story. Nico Walker wrote this from prison.
it is a, technically it's a novel, but yes, it is based on episodes of
Yes.
his life.
Yes, like in the sense that he went to war, he went to Iraq, he came back, got addicted to opioids and then heroin and robbed banks and was in prison for 11 years or did an 11-year sentence.
And this novel was like a bestseller 2 years ago, and I can't even imagine reading this fucking thing. Like, it must be the greatest book ever because the movie is one of the worst things I have ever seen. I'm like,
really?
it is.
Okay.
This movie is so god awful. Well, you know what I don't like about it? It's cute, you know. And when I say it's cute, the name of the bank of every bank is like the bank, and then there's one bank
or the shitty
the
bank.
shitty bank, or
Yeah.
the big bank, and then the sergeant he enlists with is Sergeant whomever, you know. And it's like, but then
on his Xanax prescription it says generic white male.
yeah, but then you have all of these like truly dramatic moments, like the first guy that they have to tend to in Iraq when they're medics, and his guts are hanging out of his stomach, and they're like, you got to push him back in before.
Right.
It's like, okay, are we going for realism? Are we going for satire? Or what are we doing here? And why, if you're going to switch tones as often as this movie does, please do it with, say, precision instead of a fucking sledgehammer. It just really made me mad because it's just like, at least when Michael Bay made Pain and Gain, the whole thing, it was a Michael Bay movie. It just cost $100 million less than every other Michael Bay movie. Okay. This is like the Russos trying to be auteurs, which is ridiculous because they didn't write this, but like, there's no style that isn't just, it's like they sat in a room and they were like, what would be cool here? Like if we had like everything is, it's like a really long student film with a really fucking huge budget, you know? Like the Russos directed better episodes of Happy Endings, you know, a 22-minute sitcom than this fucking thing. Oh,
you still haven't even mentioned the thing that I had the biggest problem with, the breaking the fourth wall constantly.
Yeah,
I know.
That
well, and
was
just the unnecessary voiceover. Like, who gives a shit?
Yes.
Right. constant too.
Well,
it's for like 3/4 of the movie.
Yeah. I thought it was going to come back around that he's like writing a letter to Emily, his wife, or this was going to be part of his, sentencing or when he's arrested or something. So at least there'd be a reason, but no, there is never a reason why he's doing it.
Because it was in the script.
So that's true. Which, by the way, I'm so glad you mentioned because I have a huge problem with the script because the dialogue is atrocious. So I had to write down a couple so I would remember. But one of the things he says when he's at a shitty party is everything was dismal as murder. What?
Yep.
Like what?
I wrote that down too.
You know what?
Yeah, and then
I took notes. Hold on.
Wait, well, while you're looking for that, I'm going to say my other line that's ridiculous. This guy had a face like death, and every other word out of his mouth was Joker. A face like death? What the fuck does that mean?
Here we go. I found my notes. Here's the first thing I wrote down. I have a thing for weak guys.
I know.
And then, and then here we go. Here's the next one I wrote down. Sometimes I feel like love doesn't actually exist. It's just pheromones playing tricks on people. And then I wrote, I hope this line exists to show that Emily is a dickhead and not something profound.
But the problem is, I don't think the filmmakers or the film or whomever knows which that is.
Yeah. So I'm going to just read you these notes because this is more succinct than I could ever put anything on the show in real time. Hard to have sympathy for a character who's a fucking idiot. Going to Iraq because your GF leaves you is so colossally stupid, I can't even begin to describe how dumb it is. And fuck all the Van Morrison in this movie. Tonally all over the place, not very skilled at switching tones from satire to heavy drama to romance. Feels like a bunch of student filmmakers with a really big budget. No skill or finesse, just boatloads of cash to throw at things. Wow, that's exactly what I said earlier. Okay, so maybe I can think about things that I saw.
Yeah, the other thing I have, that was all great, Dave. Good observations. The other thing I have a massive problem with, so Dave, you mentioned this, that the one thing that the film does really well are the PTSD scenes. And I agree with you. And I think I don't think it's necessarily done well. I have to say, this is one of the most, and I feel like I'm going to say this and you guys might have another example, but this is one of the most, certainly in recent memory, one of the most egregiously anti-military movies I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
Like it is, because it's so surprising because most films are all like, rah, rah, the military, rah, rah, war heroes. And this is scathing in its denouncement of not just war, but the military, which is really, that's an interesting angle. And I don't know if it necessarily does it well because there's very much a kind of caricature, cartoony element to it that feels, again, kind of tonally jarring along with the rest of the film. But it is a really fascinating stance and angle to look at, and definitely a different angle than I typically see. But what I have a problem with is also like once he becomes addicted. So opioid crisis is a huge epidemic in this country. Great. Let's talk about it. Let's get into that. Let's depict that. But then Emily becomes an opioid addict too, because she's pissed off that he's an addict and she takes some pills and then all of a sudden, boom, they're heroin addicts. Like, wait, what? Like that's what? No, like what? Like it's just strange in its depiction of addiction. And then at the end, when he turns himself in, okay, that's fine. But we get like 3 minutes of a montage of him in prison and like taking classes, but we don't really get anything about his recovery. And I'm like, wait, what? And now he's all better and everything's good and he's out and he's back with Emily. Like, what? It's like we spent 2 hours and 15 minutes on all this other shit and drawn out. And then this, you're going to just gloss over. It just feels weird. It's a weird choice.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Yeah.
But I think, Megan, you were hitting on the parts of the movie that I actually thought were kind of effective, even though the movie as a whole I thought was trash. It is vehemently anti-military, anti-war. And I think there could have been a really sharp, compelling movie here if this were like, if you chopped out the voiceover, if you like trimmed up like the first act of the movie. I think for me, the military scenes were actually kind of compelling in some of the ways that they were shot. Like some of the war scenes, I thought there were some interesting, like, crane shots and cinematography and some movements. I was like, okay, if this maybe weren't trying so hard, it would be more compelling. Like the scene in the barracks, the overhead shots in the barracks, I thought were particularly interesting. And this really, it does speak to this anti-military, anti-war sentiment, and this like also just like we don't take care of our veterans.
Yes.
Like that, there's like a sharp commentary happening in this film.
Mm-hmm.
We just kind of hang them out to dry, and we don't take care of them when we should. And there's also this like post 9/11, disillusionment with military service and pointless wars that I think also was happening here. And man, I really wish that movie was much sharper and there, because that would have been much more interesting to watch. And instead, I found this, I said this off mic to Megan, I found this so unbearable that I took out a coloring book and started coloring while I was watching the movie because I just couldn't take it.
Wow.
Otherwise. Like I needed something else to distract me.
That's a bad movie.
And I said to Evan, what I did instead of coloring was I was on Instagram looking at interior design and vegan food. And I don't normally do that while I'm watching a film.
Yeah.
No,
I was reading a book. Like, honestly, I've been trying to read more books since I have more time, and I was like, okay, I'll read, like this. I'll read one of the books that I think is shallow, and then unfortunately, the book I chose wasn't shallow. I was like, oh, I actually have to read this. So it was really a bummer. It's like, all right, do I keep watching this fucking movie or try to read this book? I guess I'll watch it.
So I want to say a couple things. So speaking on what you were saying, Evan, about the post 9/11, one thing I did actually appreciate, and I wish it had gone even a little bit deeper, but I did appreciate that it was at least there, is that it at least touches on the fact of how much racism and Islamophobia was running rampant in the military at that time. And I do appreciate that the film does touch on that. I agree with you that if the film really focused on the war scenes as well as his PTSD and addiction afterwards, like, kind of like chop off the beginning, chop off the end, tighten up the middle. I think it could have been a really good film because there's some, there is interesting material there. But I also think, and I hate to say it because one of my favorite scenes, and it's a scene that actually did move me to tears, is when he's calling, it's after he's seen some horrifying shit, and his friends have been burned to death and in a car explosion. He calls Emily and like he's like breaking down and he's like, tell me about your day. I want to hear about you. I don't want to talk about me. And it's so gutting. Like that's a really, really sad, moving scene. But at the same time, I'm like, I almost wish we would eliminate the love story and I normally don't think we should do that. But I think in this case, it's really an impediment to the film and really distracting from what actually works in the film.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it doesn't feel, their love does not feel very compelling in the movie. It doesn't seem like there's that much holding them together. It doesn't strike me as some deep emotional, intellectual connection that carries them through. Like her waiting 2 years for him to come back. And then we find out later, almost 15 years for him to be paroled. Like, I can't imagine somebody like that sitting around waiting that entire time.
Well, sometimes when you've gotten so much invested, you feel like you should keep going.
I guess so.
But no, I mean, like, they're like, okay, it's really nice and sweet that he's like, I think I adore you, and and all that, and she's scared of love because her father was a dick who beat her. Oh, great, okay, but like, anyway, it's not the really compelling part, and I agree that their love is it's kind of shallow. And so I didn't hate, believe it or not, I didn't hate this. I don't think this is the worst film I've ever seen, but good God, this is hard to watch. It's not good. Not good.
Yeah.
But Tom Holland, I do like, and I liked the score. So there we go.
Yeah. So Rick Springfield in the mid-'80s made a movie called Hard to Hold, and either Roger Ebert or Gene Siskel, I can't remember which one, called it Hard to Watch. So you just made me think of that. So it was worth seeing this movie to be reminded of that joke from roughly 1984.
Oh my God. Wait, I'm sorry. I know we're like tearing this movie apart, but I also have to say, because this is something that drove me absolutely up a wall. Its depiction of, I know I've said this before, but bank robberies, it's bothersome. And one of the things he says in the film that absolutely made me want to like scream is when he says, oh, the bank tellers, they don't mind when I'm robbing them. They go along with it. And I'm like, have you lost your mind? I'm like, getting robbed is a traumatic experience. Like, that's just ridiculous that anyone would actually say that, let alone think that. And yeah, it's like, anyway, I could go on because like you have to give over the money. You are not supposed to, like that woman who's like, that's all I'm giving you. She would be fucking fired for endangering people's lives for doing that because all money is dirty paper. That's it. And you are taught that. So anyway, so it doesn't even get bank robberies entirely right, but whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, this movie's problems are manifest right down to the bank robberies. Oh.
It's just whenever I see bank tellers on screen, it's usually going to annoy me because it's usually not depicted accurately.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
But if it was, and that's the thing, if it was a better film, I would let it slide. Be like, okay, whatever, artistic license. But yeah.
Fair. Well, it sounds like, does anybody else have anything to say about Cherry? Oh, God, I'm so disappointed by the way that somebody actually said in the movie, you got your cherry popped.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oftentimes when you're saying the title of the film, it usually is not good.
Unless it's Saving Private Ryan, and I just wish that Tom Sizemore had then turned to the screen and smiled, but otherwise fine. All right. Well, gang. That's quite an episode of Spoiler Piece Theater. It's hoo boy. So I think we can all safely say we're going to pass on Cherry, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Which is available to see on Apple TV Plus. So that might even limit some of you who don't have access to it. You're probably relieved anyway.
Sounds like we're a go on the Vigil. The Vigil. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Are you 2 days?
Yeah, sure. Why not? It's short. Where can you see this one? This is on VOD right now, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I Care a Lot is currently on Netflix. I think we'd all say, well, I'd say see at least an hour and 15 minutes of it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd say see it.
And I would say see the Billie Eilish documentary, which is also on Apple TV Plus. I think starting today. So there you go.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's Spoiler Piece Theater. Thank you very much, our editor, Otto Clamor, for editing the show for us so that we don't have to. It is a delight to hand the tapes over to you every week. You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you get podcasts, your places you get podcasts. You know where you find them. You can find us at our website, spoilerpiece.com. If you want to find us on social media, we're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook, at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. You can email us if you want to send us a note and tell us, no, actually, Cherry is the best movie ever made. That's spoilerpiece@gmail.com. Or you can call us
at 862-21-PEACE.
and let us know why we are incorrect about Cherry being, I know I said it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and I'm going to stick to that. But, let's tell me why I'm wrong. Enlighten me. If you like the show, please rate and review us by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. And if you really, really like the show, please join our Patreon, where this week we talk about Coming to America in anticipation of the sequel, Coming to America. And we would also like to thank our patrons.
Yes, we want to give a huge thank you to Bill Scahan, Bob Chipman, Charles Nash, Chris Wilkinson, Davida Margolin, Deirdre Crimmins, Christopher Jensen, Max Coville, Mike Lord of the Sith, Rory Glynn, Sean Pensionar, Shauna Harris, Shelley M. McCaskill, Shona Glasgow, and Zach Pigeon. Thank you so much, patrons.
Thanks, patrons.
Thanks.
So anyway, my name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies for some places, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. And you can follow me on the tweets, the Instagram, and Letterboxd as Dave Sees Movies.
My name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon, and since it's been a while, I'm going to say that's real as in film reel.
My name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld and on Instagram and Letterboxd at The OpinionS.
And we will see you next week. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.